Hello, friends. Welcome to Feeling This Life. We're a family support podcast that dives deep into the triumphs, challenges, and strategies that are part of the lives of those who care for children with blindness and visual impairments. I'm Paige Maynard, and I'm a teacher of the visually impaired and an early interventionist at VIPS, Visually Impaired Preschool Services.
And I'm Dr. Cathy Smith, and I also have been a teacher of students with visual impairment for many years, and now I am the Director of Research at Anchor Center for Blind Children.
I am jcastenir, and I am the Family Services Coordinator at VIPS. I am the mother of 3 girls, and my youngest has a visual impairment.
Hello, everyone. I am so excited to be with you today on the podcast, and I am even more excited to talk about and let you listen to the interview for today, which is with Juanita Miles. She is someone that I know personally and someone that I was very, very excited to be able to get to interview and get to hear her story because I really hadn't heard her say it all before. So we're excited for you to be able to hear it and to hear all the insights that she has.
I'm really excited about this interview. This whole season, I'm super excited about where we're talking about different expectations that people have of people with visual impairments and what they can actually do and accomplish. And this is something in my own life that I'm really struggling to work through because sometimes my daughter doesn't seem blind to other people or seem visually impaired at all to other people. And I get self-conscious thinking, do they think we're crazy parents who are just saying all these things about our daughter and that our daughter needs this, but she's fine? And obviously, I know that that's not true, and I need to not worry about what other people think and continue to advocate for my child. But it's hard when she just can adapt well in certain situations, but she still needs accommodations or technology to be able to make the most of her functional vision. So this really excited me because Juanita, I've known her for like 2 years now. And for the first year that I worked with her, I didn't know she was blind. And that so validated my worry that my child does still need these things. She is legitimately visually impaired, whether people think she is or not. And I can just celebrate those things and advocate for her and work for her while knowing that, she's not the first child to go through this. She won't be the last. She can be a successful adult while needing things.
Today we are here with Juanita Miles, and Juanita is the preschool director at Kidstown Preschool at VIPS. She has worked in the field of early childhood for 35 plus years, right?
Yes.
And she happens to be visually impaired. Juanita, I am very thankful that you're here with us today, that you agreed to talk with me and be patient with all the technology stuff that we just went through while trying to get started recording. And I'm thankful also that you're open to sharing your experiences with your vision with everybody. Can you tell us anything else about yourself that you want us to know, or about your visual impairment and how it affects your vision overall?
Okay. So I was diagnosed with a vision impairment when I was 10 years old. I was diagnosed with uveitis in my right eye. Then many years later, diagnosed with uveitis in my left eye, as well as retina detachment in both eyes at some point, and was having hemorrhages in my younger days. So ended up having the vitreous jelly removed from my left eye at one point. Have lost all of my vision in my right eye, and then through the years have had ups and downs with my vision in the left eye.
Can you tell us a little bit more about uveitis and what it means as a diagnosis?
Yeah. So I would have flare-ups, have hemorrhages with that. They initially would treat it with medication, pills, steroids, and then there would be times when I would have a hemorrhage, and so then I would need to get an injection, and then just through constant back and forth of being on medication to treat hemorrhages and things like that, ended up having retina detachment in my right eye, which then, like I said, caused me to lose. Had surgery, could have left me without vision in that eye, or it could have been successful. Anyway, so after that surgery, I did lose all of my vision in my right eye. And then also, when I got uveitis in my left eye, they were treating it, same kind of thing with medication, pills, treating it, and with injections. And then there was an experimental drug program at the National Institute for Health for patients with uveitis. It's experimental drug, so I enrolled in that program. It's in that study, which the medication worked for me, so was successful. But then over time, like I said, continue to have other vision issues, like with retina detachment. Issues with my cornea. Ended up having the vitreous jelly removed from my left eye.
And uveitis is a autoimmune condition?
Yes, it is. It's an yes.
Okay,
autoimmune.
so it's your body is like attacking your eyes?
Yes, that's correct. It is an autoimmune deficiency where, the body attacks, I guess, your eye or cells or whatnot.
And it sounds like over time it can attack different parts of your eye, and then you would kind of have different impacts from that. Okay.
Yes. And you have flare-ups. I mean, I experienced flare-ups where it would get worse, and the medication would work, and my vision would clear up. Then you have another flare-up, and it's a roller coaster.
Yeah. Overall, can you tell us about what you see right now, what your vision allows, and just all those kind of
Sure.
how is it affecting you and how you access things?
Yeah. So I don't have any vision on my right side. So if I'm walking with people somewhere, I do prefer to be on their left-hand side or next to a wall or a barrier or something on my right side. And so no vision in my right eye. My left eye, I do have vision, and that vision's right now it's stable. Things are pretty much right now pretty hazy and foggy, and I can see outlines of things. When it's dark outside, I see nothing when I'm outside in the dark. So in darkness, everything is. I can see lights and things like that, but I can't really make out any kind of details when it's dark outside.
Like a person walking outside.
Yeah, like a person, yes. Contrast is very important for me to be able to see. I need some contrast. And so things are pretty foggy. That's the best way to, probably for a sighted person, when they're saying it's foggy or cloudy out, they don't see well. That's kind of life for me all the time.
I think that's a good way to describe it for somebody who hasn't experienced it.
Right.
To think about what does it look like to look through fog. Or
yes, because someone that can see, they know the fog or the haze is going to end at some point. But for me, that fog or that haze is there. That's a part of my life, 24/7. Yeah.
I know that you have talked about how your vision has changed over the years. Tell us about what it was like when you were growing up, what your vision was like.
Yeah, so when I was first diagnosed with the uveitis, I had it in my right eye. So I really didn't notice any issues, really. Or actually, I've been looking at things up close. Yeah. And so my mom took me to the doctor, and they diagnosed me with uveitis. And so I really didn't have a whole lot of changes or lifestyle changes during that time. I was able to get a license, able to drive. And then when I got into, I think, my 20s, is when I started having some more significant vision loss in my left eye. So I was able to really maintain my normal activities and things like that. But eventually my vision progressed where I wasn't able to drive anymore. So, and that takes away some of your independence when you're able to drive a car, and then it's like, oh no, that's not safe, and it's not safe, and so you lose that independence. So then you learn, okay, what am I going to do, because I don't want to depend on other people to take me everywhere. So then I learned about services in the community. In Jefferson County, we have a transportation system for people who have disabilities. So I rely on that public transportation. And through the years of losing vision, I used to be able to read regular print. And so I lost the ability to just read regular standard size print, moved to large print. Now I'm not able to read even large print unless I use magnification devices. And so I've learned different strategies of how to access the world around me. I went through vocational rehab as an adult and had classes in home management where they teach you, how to clean your house when you've had vision loss, strategies for doing that, for accessing technology by using devices where you use a screen reader to use your phone, or a screen reader to use the computer. I learned strategies on how you've got shampoo and conditioner. How do you tell the difference between the two if they're the same size bottle?
So what do you do?
Yeah, so one of the strategies that I use is, like on my shampoo, I put a rubber band around the bottle. And so anytime I change out, you need a new bottle of shampoo, I always put a rubber band around the bottle of shampoo. And I know the bottle with the shampoo, or with the rubber band, that's my shampoo. And the other one is the conditioner. Accessing a microwave. It's got a flat screen, so I have these little plastic dots called bump dots that I stick on there, and I know where the start button and power is, and so I'm able to access the microwave by doing that. So also, learning through home management, through vocational rehab, learning how to cook. There's, special measuring cups that I have that have large print measurements on the measuring cups that I can see without using any kind of magnification device. Also take advantage of the talking book program that is offered, so I can get books each month that are already pre-recorded on a cassette, on a specially designed recorder, that I can read those books, so I have access to print. And then just to get around in unfamiliar places, I have a cane that I use. I've been trained on how to use that cane. In familiar places, I don't need to use a cane, but when it's an unfamiliar environment, I do use my cane to help navigate those spaces to get around safely.
I think it's interesting to hear, like, you started out kind of talking about that with the things that your vision didn't or doesn't allow you to access, like accessing the things that you need to see in order to drive, or accessing print, in smaller sizes and things like that. But then I think it's interesting how then you turn the conversation to, but there are all these other services and supports that you have accessed, speaking of access, that have been, sounds like it has been helpful for you as adapting and kind of learning to live with a visual impairment.
Sure. And one of the things that I did was, here in Louisville, we have the Office for the Blind. And so they have like dormitory. And so a couple times throughout my life, I've actually accessed services through them and have stayed in the dorm there and have lived with people whose vision is more pronounced than mine, and people who have no vision, and just to be in that community to see other people that, they're living their life with no vision, and what it's like for them to access the world. I still have some vision, so I can still see things, but, I know by being in an environment and having lived in an environment for a short time that people who have no vision, they don't let them stop them from living and going about doing their normal activities that they enjoy.
Whenever you started losing more of your vision, how did it make you feel like from an emotional standpoint?
Yeah, so I'm a pretty independent person. So.
I would agree with that, knowing you, yeah.
And so losing or not being able to drive was like, oh my goodness, I'm going to have to depend on other people. And so, that was hard to give up not driving. But, I've also, I know some other people who are like, oh, I just don't want to use the public transportation system. And they solely rely on family members and friends. Mm-hmm. But I'm like, that's not who I am. And I want to be independent as much as I can. And there are times I do trust family and friends and rely on them to take me places. But as much as possible, I'm going to use the public transportation system and to get to where I want to be by being independent.
Yeah. So speaking of being independent, while you worked through some of your feelings while you were losing some vision,
yeah.
Do you feel like you tried to kind of work through it independently, or were there any people that you leaned on, or were there any supports that were helpful for you? Right. What did you do?
Yeah, so I had a good support system. I'm involved in my church, so I had my faith that I rely on to get me through difficult situations. And sure, there was a point where I had a job that I really enjoyed, and working with the public school system, and as a teacher, and I loved that job and loved having a class of 20-something kids. But when my vision got to the worst point, it was like, I can't safely do this. And so my vision was, there was a procedure that I needed to have, but the doctors didn't want to do it at that point. They're like, we need to wait and let it progress, and we want to maintain what you have. But I couldn't, fulfill my responsibilities or my role as a teacher. So I had to be at home waiting for things to get really bad.
So you had to be at home waiting for your vision to get worse, so that you could have the surgery to make it better, right?
And it took I think 3 months of waiting for that. And then, I kept thinking, as soon as I get through this, I'm going to be able to return back to my job and things are going to be great. And so then I had the surgery, and so I kept waiting, and I thought, okay, as soon as I get glasses, then when things settle and heal, I'll get glasses and everything's going to be good and I'm going to be ready to go. And then I'll never forget when I got glasses, I'm like, wait a minute. This is not what it's supposed to be. I'm supposed to be able to go back to my full-time teaching job that I had. And so it was really hard to realize that, hey, this is the best it's going to be. And so that was, a moment that I had to reevaluate. Oh, my goodness, what am I going to do? I went to school to be a teacher, and I can't teach a classroom of 20-something kids with this vision. It's just not safe for me or for the children. And so, I'm a pretty strong person and pretty independent, and I'm like, okay, I'm going to have to figure out, okay, what can I do? Because just giving up and not doing anything was not an option for me. I was not that's not what I wanted for myself. And so that's when I sought out and started going to vocational rehab to figure out, okay, what am I going to do from here? This is what I have. And, I use them as a support system, my family, and again, my faith, my church, also there to support me. And at the vocational rehab, they had a therapist there. If you needed to go see a therapist and talk with them on a regular basis, you could do that. But I had my support system around me that helped me get through that period of time.
So it sounds like you, in kind of the grief process of losing your vision, you were kind of in that bargaining phase where if this just happens, then it'll be better. If this just happens, then it'll be better. But then it wasn't as good as you thought it would be. So you had to come back to yourself and figure out, well, what am I going to do now that it's not going to change? Right. Or that this is kind of going to be a lifelong thing that's going to be part of me.
Yes, you're exactly right, Paige. It is a grief process. Because when I just lost the vision of my right eye, it was just one side. And, you could go about, I was going about my daily activities. But then you start losing vision in the other eye, and then you think you're going to have this miracle surgery that's going to fix everything, and I'm going to be going back to the job that I really loved and enjoyed and felt like that's where I was meant to be. Yeah. And then it's like, I don't know, when they tested me out for glasses, I should have known then that, hey, this is good. But then I thought, I really didn't think about it. I'm like, yeah, when I really get those glasses, I'm going to be able to, it's all going to be a miracle, and I'm going to be able to see and go back to what I was doing. And it was a shock. You grieve that because it's a part of you that you've lost. And so, yes, definitely it is a grieving process. And takes time to process that. And like I said, I kept telling myself, when I get those glasses, it's going to be all good. But it wasn't.
If I just do blah, blah, then it'll be changed or whatever.
Yeah, for sure.
So if you were like looking back on your grief process in that time where there were a lot of changes and things like that, about how long was it before you came to acceptance? And I don't even know. Are you at acceptance right now? And like, how do you feel about it now?
I can't really pinpoint a point at which I'm like, oh, this is the way it's going to be. Because, I mean, I continue to, every 3 or 4 months I have to go to the eye doctor because, I still have ongoing issues and they need to monitor things. And I have one doctor that says, oh, I think if you had this kind of surgery, your vision would improve. And this other doctor that I'm supposed to see, he's like, no, I don't think we need to mess with it. We don't, your risk of infection. And so, it's like, oh, so, my vision is what it is. Maybe if I had this other cornea procedure they want me to do, maybe it would be better. But then the risk are there of, it could make things worse. I could lose all of my vision.
Yes.
But, so it's like, at what point did I, come to terms? It's just you get up every day and you accept a life. You accept what you have. It is what it is. But I can't really pinpoint and say, oh, this is when I accepted it. Yeah, this is when it's been a life-changing experience for sure because, this is not what I expected. But I've learned to adapt. And when you lose, I tell people when you lose a body function or the ability to do something, you have a choice as to whether or not you learn how to adapt to that or learn to modify so that you can participate in normal activities of life. So certainly I've chosen to learn how to adapt and modify.
Mm-hmm. It's good to hear you talk about the ways that you've learned to adapt and modify and those sorts of things. And I also feel like I remember you just having shared with maybe us before that you've had some increases in your vision, that it has gotten better at times.
Yeah, I remember one time clearly I don't know if it was I had a procedure where, so I'd already lost all my vision, my right eye, and so I had vision, I had a procedure on my left eye, and so anyways I needed to be, after they did the procedure, I had to be patched and my eye was protected from injury and that kind of thing, so I couldn't see there for a bit. So I remember coming home from the hospital after that procedure, and I had some family members there, and we were getting ready to eat. And I remember one of the family members saying to one of the other family members, well, who's going to feed her? And I heard that, and I'm like, what? Who's going to feed me? I'm like, seriously, nobody needs to feed me.
Yeah.
I'm an adult. I can feed myself. And I'm like, so no, nobody needs to feed me. And so, hearing that was like, just couldn't believe I was hearing that people thought that if you didn't have vision at all, you had to be fed. You couldn't learn to do that. But anyway, so then I remember after my patch was able to be removed, it was around Christmas time. And I remember before going and having the surgery, I had Christmas decorations out and that sort of thing. And I had this centerpiece on my table. And before I had the surgery, it had like velvety ribbon on it, red ribbon, or I thought it was more like a burgundy color ribbon. But I remember after having that one procedure and my patch was removed, I was sitting at the table and I saw that centerpiece. And that red was just so vibrant and just so clear that I'm like, oh my goodness. It was almost painful a little bit because it was just so vibrant and just so bright. And I did not remember it being that way before I'd had that procedure. So so I've had periods of where my vision's gotten better, and then again it's decreased due to some other issue going on.
So it sounds like in seeing that really bright red that maybe before you didn't even realize that you weren't able to see that, and then you were, and it was like, whoa, this is a change.
Yes, it was like, I was thinking it was like a deep burgundy color, and it really wasn't. It was this bright, beautiful red color, but I'm like, whoa, I did not realize.
That's so red.
Yeah. Yeah, and I've even gone through, and I know some people have, if you have blue socks and black socks, or even brown socks, I stay away from brown socks because it's hard for me sometimes to see those colors and distinguish. Okay, is this a blue, navy blue, a black sock? And then I've learned strategies. There's a strategy for how you wash your clothes. There's things that you can do to wash them so that the black and the brown's always connected, and you learn different strategies of, again, adapting and modifying your environment.
I think we might need to have you back to tell us about like your daily life, like all of your like cleaning hacks and your laundry stuff, because to me I always feel like those things are really interesting. So related to your vision, what were you most fearful of that you have overcome?
The most fearful thing for me when I started losing my vision was not being able to work and being productive. And that was important to me because I had worked.
Yeah, you're independent.
Yes,
You've already told us, yeah.
And I'm like, I have this, I have degrees, and I wanted to be able to use them. And the thought of not being able to work, because I need a purpose, and my purpose is not to be in four walls, 24/7, but to be out. And so what was fearful for me was, again, not being able to be a productive member of society. That was the most, I think, fearful for me. And being able to do what I love, working with children.
And once you were able to overcome that fear and have all of the new skills that you have and things, how did that feel to have learned that you could and you can and you do?
Yeah. So, it made me proud for sure, but it took, I think, through the training that I had at vocational rehab, that gave me the confidence, because I needed confidence in myself, because after you go through vision loss, you lose some of your confidence. You don't feel as confident about your abilities. And so I certainly gained confidence because I knew that when in searching and seeking a job that I was going to have to, advocate for myself and say, here's what's going on with me, and here's what I'm going to need help with. Fortunately, I work at VIPS, and VIPS has been willing to accommodate me here and provide for the needs that I have so that I can do the job that I do here.
So it sounds like you're talking about how maybe you didn't feel like you had what it took to get back into working, or like the things that you didn't know to help you get back into it. But now you know those things, and now you're just doing your thing.
Yes, right.
Yeah,
right.
You talked about your friends and your family, and the person that asked who was going to feed you. I was like, oh my goodness gracious. Has that person's opinion of your visual impairment changed over time?
Oh, definitely.
Oh, that's so good.
Yes, because they're unless I think people, one of their greatest fears of if they had some kind of disability, is being visually impaired or blind. A lot of people are fearful of that because they feel like you just can't do anything,
which is not true.
Which is not true. You're exactly right. That is not true. And that individual came from an era where that's what if you had any kind of disability, life is almost hopeless. Which again, is not true. But I think in hearing from those around me who really didn't know anything about vision loss and how you can overcome it, and how the world is a different place. There's modification, again, adaptations. But it's been, I've had people say to me, gosh, I just never realized, that you can overcome, and there's ways to do whatever you need to do to take care of your own needs and be self-dependent or self-reliant and take care of your own needs.
How would you complete the sentence? I didn't know I couldn't see blank, and I feel blank about it.
There for a while, I thought I didn't see that I would be able to return to a job or a career working with children again. At one point, I thought, that chapter is over, so I need to figure out something else to do with my life. And that made me sad, because that's what I had prepared for going through school, was to prepare to be a teacher and educator. Yeah, I thought when I lost pretty much a large percentage of my vision, I thought, you know what, I don't think I'm going to ever be able to return to a classroom with children. Sure, I mean, I grieved and a bit and was sad about that, but then realized, that that's not true.
Mm-hmm. And knowing that's not true, how does that make you feel? Or how did it make you feel when you started to realize that?
Well, I have got more confidence in myself. I felt proud of the fact that with accommodations, yes, I am able to return to working with children and be successful.
What advice would you give to families who have children whose vision may change over time?
Yeah, I think exposing your children to as much as possible in the world. I mean, going on outings, exploring nature, going to museums, just exposing them to as many opportunities and experiences that you can in life. So one, that as their vision decreases, they will have things that they can use as a reference point to refer back to.
Like a visual memory.
Yes. And, and life isn't over. I mean, you just learn how to adapt and modify your environment.
Yeah, so helping them to see that their child's vision may change, but that's just a kind of bump in their road, and you'll learn to adapt, and you'll grieve it, but you'll get through it, and it will be part of your life, and you'll be empowered, and you'll be able to be successful anyway.
Right.
Thank you very, very much, Juanita, for sharing your experience with us today. And I'm really thankful for your work with kids with visual impairment. So thank you.
Thank you, Paige.
One of the themes that Juanita talked about, and Jenny, that you had already really identified before we started listening, because here's a little secret to listeners, we get to listen to the interview before you do, but is that idea of other people's expectations, and then also that theme around what it might be like to lose your vision as an adult and growing up, and comparing that to what it is like in early childhood. So what insights do either of you have today after you've listened to the interview?
Yeah, that was super exciting to hear her story, because I think as an early interventionist, we don't often get to, we don't follow our students until they're adults. So I kind of feel like this was listening to the other side. What is it like on the other end? And I don't always know a lot about what that's like for adults who lose their vision later in life, or just transitioning into independent adulthood. So that was really valuable for me to hear that side.
I loved how she talked about her passion for education and teaching, and how she thought she was going to lose that whenever she lost her vision, and she found a way to keep working in that field that she loved. And it just validates that just because you don't have vision doesn't mean you can't live out your dreams and achieve the jobs that you want to and the success that you want. So that was really encouraging to me.
It was nice, I think, also as I was interviewing her, to hear her response to my question about what could you not see, but then you realized that maybe it was a little different, or that you could see. And I was expecting her to go back to that like Christmas ribbon or something that she didn't realize that she couldn't see, like from a physical standpoint. But really, I think she took it so much deeper than that, because at the end of the day, our vision is what it is, and maybe it changes, or maybe for some people it doesn't. But the whole big thing is that this is really about so much more than visual impairment and so much more than blindness. It's about choosing and learning to see that life is still beautiful no matter what happens, and that you can still do things, and that you can make accommodations for yourself, and you can still be successful. So I think that was my favorite thing.
Yeah, I don't even know Juanita, and I was very impressed with her wanting to be independent and just doing whatever she can. And when she said that about, you wake up every day and it is what it is, and that you're grateful for what you have, and that's just so, that was very inspiring and should be inspiring to all of us.
I loved how she explained a little bit of her life hacks, like putting the hair tie on the shampoo. So I was really intrigued by that, knowing that that's something that's coming in my future as my daughter gets more and more independent. So if you check the show notes near the survey, there is a little handout of Juanita's top life hacks.
Oh, that'll be great. Yeah, I thought that was very interesting to hear about. And I know that when I was providing services for families, that families often had like super specific questions like that. Like, how is my child going to know what color socks they're putting on or whatever? And when they're one or two, you don't always have an answer for that. But as they get older, there are answers. So there are very specific strategies that blind adults have to cook in the kitchen, to know what color clothes they're wearing. They just may not be appropriate right now for little babies, but that doesn't mean you can't work out something on your own. So I thought that was a really interesting thing to think about, how as you get older and they can talk about their specific vision more, it's easier, I think. Do you find that too, Paige, in early intervention?
I do. I today just came from a home visit where the mom asked me a question about how are we going to help him to do blah, blah, blah. And I said, no one has ever asked me that before. And it feels like after about 10 years of doing this job, I would have been asked all of the questions.
No.
But I haven't been asked all of the questions. And so I said, well, in general, research tells us this. He may not be ready for that yet, but you can go ahead and start now, and you'll know, it will be over the long term that he will get this. And what it was how do I help him to understand what the car is? And actually that was part of one of our other episodes last season. And so we talked about, he may not understand right now all those things about the car, but let him go up to it and explore it on the outside and the inside. And as he gets older, he'll let you know, and you'll be able to help him to understand which car is yours and what it looks like and all of those things. But yes, I find that too, and I just found that today in my work.
There you go. That's our job. Do you find that, Jenny, with your daughter, that things get easier for her as she gets older and can tell you more about what works for her?
Yeah, I do. I think that part of it is just me feeling like I can trust her as what she's telling me, where when she was younger, like 3 or 5, I didn't know if she was just talking or if it was just a random thing that she saw that day that she didn't see on a regular basis. But now she can answer my more in-depth questions. Like if we're driving and she tells me she sees something, then I can ask another question about it to get more information to really determine what she sees. Where in the past she'd be like, oh, look at that tree. And, I couldn't say, what colors do you see on the tree and all those types of things, or where is the building near the tree, or do you see a fence in front of the building, all those types of things. So I feel like the older she gets, the more I start to understand her vision better.
And I would also say understanding her vision better, and I'm sure she understands her vision better as well with getting older, than all of those little things that, could have been, well, how are we going to help her with this? It just starts to be one step at a time, like that path laid out in front of you and her, maybe. How do you feel?
She's learned what works for her as well. And I see that she just kind of knows it. So yesterday was the last day of school here, and she has a special Chromebook that's very large. And she brought home her Chromebook for the summer. And she saw that her sister's Chromebooks had little cute backgrounds of like puppies. And so she wanted to do that too. So her sister was showing her how to put the puppy on her background. and she really liked a golden retriever, but she said, I can't use that one because the dog is light and the Google word is light and I won't be able to find everything. And she told her sister, can you find me a black lab? Because she knew like that she needed that contrast.
Oh, nice. Good for her. Yeah.
That's her little thing that she did to be able to help her. That almost just makes a tear come to my eye that she knows that and she's able to do that. That's amazing.
So that was really big for me, and to hear her say what she needs, because sometimes I worry at school, is she really explaining what she needs to these teachers, or does she even know? So that was
sounds like she absolutely knows. That's wonderful.
She is a little bit bossy. Her report card said that she needed to work on her bossiness. So there's like a fine line with your children of advocating versus bossy.
I used to tell parents, because they would say, oh, she's so bossy or she's so stubborn. And I used to say, you know, when you're little, that seems like a negative thing. But as you get older, especially if you have a visual impairment and you have to speak up for yourself, that's a totally, we admire that.
We do.
That in older children and adults. So don't always think of it as a negative thing and something you have to change, because there will be times in her life where that's going to be very important for her to do that and to speak up and say, hey, I need a black dog on my background and not a golden retriever. That's so wonderful. Thanks for sharing this interview with Juanita with us, Paige, and we look forward to the next time.
Thank you so much for listening to Feeling This Life. Please consider subscribing to Feeling This Life wherever you get your podcasts. And please take a minute or two to give us your feedback and your ideas for future episodes by completing our survey, which is linked in the show notes. There, you'll also find ways to get in contact with us, and you'll find resources related to today's episode. Please join us again next time for another episode of Feeling This Life.